So, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This episode, the one that you're about to watch, it's actually the entire reason I came up with this project. Sure, owning and driving a race car is cool, but this part, diving into the history, taking you along with me in the hopes that it somehow will land, that's the stuff. Plus, I needed to go through this so I could figure out what spec to actually restore the car back to. Because honestly, I had no idea, even when I forked over the money for the car. Create a compelling history video that lives up to my fantasies, and try and figure out where the hell this project is going. No pressure, right? In the first episode, I talked about why I chose the 996, but I didn't elaborate on why I was drawn to this particular GT3 Cup car. It's actually pretty simple. Grand Am racing history, and I was 19 years old when I got back from that trip to Japan, and it was as if gasoline had been thrown onto my automotive desire fire. Constantly going to car shows, reading magazines, immersing myself in anything I could experience.
Yo.
Hey man, how's it going?
Pretty good.
I wanted to ask you about a race that we went to in 2006. In the midst of all that, I managed to convince my friend Joey that we should check out a local sports car race. Tickets purchased, we drove 45 minutes west on Saturday, May 13th, 2006 for the Gainesville Grand Prix. The location? My hometown racetrack, Phoenix International Raceway. The racetrack, aptly named the Desert Jewel, opened in 1964 when local real estate developer and racer Richard Haig wanted to build a permanent road course in his hometown. Based on the success of Riverside and Laguna Seca raceways in California, he bought 314 acres of land in the Estrella Mountains to build the world's next great road course, with the drag strip and oval track as afterthought additions. Well, it turns out the oval is actually what kept the track alive through its trials and tribulations. IndyCar races started to attract more and more people early on, and it turns out Phoenix is kind of a decent place to do testing during racing's winter off-season. Though, it was the NASCAR Cup Series that really drew the crowds and set the trajectory starting in 1988. 3 years later, they did away with that 2.7-mile road course that ran outside the oval and created a 1.51-mile infield road course. That's what the Grand American Road Racing Series raced on until I attended that final Phoenix 250 in 2006. There's way more to the story of PIR. Corruption, chance encounters, and such. But that'll have to wait for another time. Of course, I have my own history with PIR, which includes the time I hiked up Rattlesnake Hill so I could take a photo that everybody's taken before, and then proceed to fall, drop my camera, and lose my media credential, all before qualifying even started that day. I have managed to have some fun capturing other moments throughout the years, though. So, that race in 2006.
I remember being in the stands, and I remember the sound. I think that's what stuck with me. It was...
If you haven't caught on already, connections are kind of a big deal to me. And after that race, I just instantly felt an allegiance to the series. Right away, I was a Grand Am fan. I didn't know much about Grand Am or the stars involved, but I was instantly hooked and followed the series via the Speed Channel until it merged with ALMS in 2014. Hang on a second, what even is Grand Am and ALMS, and what's this merger, and what am I even talking about? Well, I'm glad you. The perfect combination of automobile advancements and post-war attitudes led to a boom of sports car racing globally after World War II. In the United States, the preeminent sanctioning body at the time was the Sports Car Club of America. And within the SCCA, one man is often credited with the rise of sports car racing in the U.S., John Bishop. Bishop joined the SCCA in 1956 and just 6 years later became the executive director, leading the organization from primarily amateur competition into professional races aligned with internationally recognized regulations. Credited with the creation of beloved race series like the United States Road Racing Championship, along with the Canadian American and Trans-American Championships. Bishop seemed destined for greatness until political upheaval derailed things at the SCCA, and he abruptly departed in 1969. Though, it didn't take long for the phone to ring, and on the other end of the line was NASCAR's founder, Bill France Sr. With road racing popularity on the rise, France saw an opportunity for a new sanctioning body, and he wanted Bishop to run it. The International Motorsports Association, or IMSA as it's more commonly known, began in July 1969. The whole history is fascinating, and I highly recommend the 4-part series Vintage Motorsport did in 2004, or the incredible IMSA history book from Mark Raffoff and Mitch Bishop. Enormous technological advancements, drug dealer racers, it's all there, and it's all thrilling. Suffice it to say that the greatness Bishop was destined for was achieved. Car manufacturers, sponsors, and fans could not get enough of IMSA racing when it reached its peak in the late 70s and early 80s. Though, after heart bypass surgery in 1987, Bishop reevaluated his situation, along with looking at where the sport was headed, and decided to sell the series in 1989. Thus began a tumultuous and complicated set of years for North American sports car racing. Nearing the end of the 20th century, Georgia businessman Don Panos decided to start a sports car series aligned with the ACO, organizers of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The American Le Mans series began in 1999, and 2 years later, Panos bought what remained of IMSA, making it the ALMS sanctioning body from 2001 onward. At the same time, Jim France, son of IMSA's co-founder Bill Sr., saw an opportunity to carry forward what his father had started by creating another sports car series. Grand American Road Racing was founded in 1999, and its inaugural Rolex Sports Car Series began in 2000. The format was similar to the series that came before and after, multi-class endurance races with prototypes and Grand Touring, or GT cars. One polarizing deviation was the introduction of Daytona prototypes as the top class in 2003. Citing safety and cost concerns with the globally used open cockpit Le Mans prototypes, Grand Am decided it would utilize tube-framed closed cockpit cars for its top class. The series visited iconic circuits throughout North America, many of which owned by the France family via the International Speedway Corporation. These included Daytona International Speedway, Watkins Glen International, and yes, Phoenix International Raceway. From the beginning of this project, there were two people I really wanted to talk to while driving down Grand Am's memory lane. Naturally, I gravitated towards someone always looking to capture speed, emotion, and competition from behind the lens.
My dad got me into racing, and he got me into photography. We moved.
Brian Cleary has been a motorsports photographer for over 40 years and has an incredible collection of photos from a variety of series within the U.S. He also was the official Grand Am photographer from 2001 until it merged with ALMS in 2014. Before we get to that, though, I had to hear where it all began for him.
One of the first races he took me to was the Continental, the sports car race that Ken Miles and Lloyd Ruby won, the race that was depicted in Ford versus Ferrari. And in those days, they used to have the podium celebration. Victory Lane was like right on the racetrack in front of the grandstands, so all the fans could come down to the fence. Well, my dad had also just bought me a little plastic camera, so I was, I think, 7 at the time. And one of the first pictures, I still have the picture, it was the Ford GT with Ken Miles and Lloyd Ruby sitting on the racetrack in front of, after they won the race with the wreath and everything.
Quite the first photo, if you ask me.
A very specific story. I was working as a contract photographer for ISC in Daytona Beach, International Speedway Corporation, that owned half the racetracks, Daytona, Darlington, Talladega, all the ISC tracks. Well, I was a contract worker. I wasn't full-time there, but I was a contractor, and I had my own office there. So I would come in and make prints and just do whatever needed to be done. At that time, we were starting to do emails and digital stuff and all that. So Grand Am had started in 2000. Jim France and they were heavily involved in getting Grand Am rolling. At the end of the 2000 season, they said they wanted to do a yearbook, and they're like, we don't have any photography. So they had to start, retroactively going back to other photographers who were at the races and saying, hey, do you have any pictures from these races? And they're like, dollar signs start flashing. So they figured at that time, we need to hire a photographer so we can have images from every race, which is something I can't believe they didn't think of the year before when they started the series. But back then it was a different world. But so I was in my office, and Christy Hyde was the PR lady for Grand Am at the time. She came down to talk to Mike Meadows. She said, hey, Jim France says we need a photographer for Grand Am. And I was in the office, and I said, I'll do it. And basically that was it. For the next 13 years, I was a series photographer for Grand Am. Just a matter of, again, happening to be in the right place at the right time. And like I say, I've never looked back. I just thought it was just a interesting thing to be involved in. I've never been like a real technical, I don't, know the technical side of race cars as much as I just love the aesthetics and the atmosphere, and I loved also I remember just being amazed at seeing all these new racetracks for the first time, new to me. Watkins Glen and Mid Ohio and Laguna Seca, Mosport, VIR, Lime Rock. It went by quickly, I'll say that. 13 years was like, man, it's over with. But those are some of the impressions I had of it. It was more of I wouldn't say club racing atmosphere, but it was definitely more approachable and an interesting era of American sports cars.
Another person I selfishly wanted to reach out to was one of my favorite drivers from that era.
Hello? Hey, Darren. Yeah,
hey,
sorry about that.
Darren Law raced every season in Grand Am, starting with that inaugural season in 2000. He won a GTU championship in 2001, driving a Porsche 996 GT3R, and won the 24 Hours of Daytona in 2009, driving a Brumos Porsche Riley Mark 11 with David Donahue, Antonio Garcia, and Buddy Rice. He's now co-owner and team principal of Flying Lizard Motorsports, a prolific sports car team based here in Arizona. In the beginning, it was a successful karting career that found Darren moving into sports cars, and right away he found success behind the wheel of Porsche 911s as a teenager. In 1998, a friend offered up his name as a good shoe for the 12 Hours of Sebring, driving a Porsche 993 for G&W Motorsports. He was 19 years old.
I got in, and I was quicker than everybody else. We had qualified higher and ran higher than the car has ever run in the class back then. And unfortunately, I think probably 3/4 of the way through, it broke a throttle cable, and we didn't finish well because of that, because of a mechanical issue. But I had done so well in the car that Cole Scroggum, the owner of G&W, asked me if I would, from that point on, basically stay on
and run he did. Full throttle for almost 2 decades, driving anything with wheels in whatever series, at whatever track, in whatever country.
But I was super lucky as I went further on with G&W, and then eventually joined Flying Lizard and Brumos. I was able to run probably for almost a decade, both series, both Grand Am and ALMS, between the cars. So, and the series did a really nice job with not putting races on conflicting weekends. And so, it was really good being able to run both programs.
Then, on September 5th, 2012, it was announced that Grand Am and the American Le Mans Series would merge. IMSA once again emerged as the foremost sports car sanctioning body in North America, and has remained so ever since. So where does my car, the 2000 996 GT3 Cup car, fit into all this? When did it race in Grand Am? Where the hell am I going with all this? Well, it's a bit of a complex. Dr. Ferdinand Porsche began racing in... I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Let's just say that Porsche was well versed in all things motorsport by the time the late 90s rolled around. When the first water-cooled 911 debuted, anticipation was high for the latest GT weapon from Stuttgart. The 996 GT3R would be the flagship offering, and it was designed with one race in mind: the 24 Hours of Le Mans. While the GT3R was still a 996 GT3 at its core, it was heavily modified by the factory, including more power, a revamped suspension, and altered aerodynamics. The car proved its worth at Le Sarthe, winning its class at Le Mans on debut in 1999 and again in 2000. Another race car on offer from the German marque was my car, the 996 GT3 Cup car. Intended for racing in Porsche's storied Carrera Cup and Super Cup championships, the GT3 Cup car more closely resembled the road-going GT3. It shared the same engine as the road car, making 355 horsepower, but came in 400 pounds lighter on the scales after being stripped of any unnecessary parts and outfitted with a roll cage, air jacks, and a fire suppression system. My car made its Grand Am debut at the 8th round of the inaugural 2000 season at Circuit Trois-Rivières on the streets of Quebec in Canada. And there it is, leading the GTU class before a lengthy pit stop took them out of contention. This moment actually had me wondering, with the GT3R being the flagship Porsche race car, how was it that people were able to enter Cup cars alongside and be competitive? Darren actually had some thoughtful insight about that.
Yeah, it was a bit odd, but, I guess I have a different perspective. I had a different perspective then than I do now, because back then, that was my whole job. I was hired to drive and get in and go, and it didn't matter what it was. You just drove, and you got the most out of whatever you had. Now it's funny, and so, it was odd, but we just drove what we had, and this is the car that was given to us, or that's what the team chose to run. So that was it. You just dealt with it. But now, being on the team owner side, I look at it differently, and it's more of I would be extremely upset that a nowadays, that a cup car was beating the GT3R and the rules don't work, and we'd be fighting all the different, things behind the scenes. But back then, at least, and probably for the guys now, as a driver, I mean, you just drive whatever you're told to drive.
Technically, it was an inferior car, so the relatively open rulebook allowed it. After all, Grand Am was a new race series and needed entries to fill out race grids. But how was it that the Cup cars were so competitive against the GT3Rs early on?
And, that year in 2000 was the first year that we ran the water-cooled car. It was the R, the GT3R,
Yeah.
and then the next year was the RS. That was a really odd car to drive. It wasn't like the best product. It had I don't know if you're interested in any of this, but in the suspension travel, it had huge camber gains and toe changes, and so we couldn't let the suspension travel, and we had to run the car super stiff, like stiffer than we've ever run a car, just to keep it on its same platform. And so it was a very stiff, rough car to drive. It was an interesting car to drive, and obviously then it was developing further, and Porsche started to make changes, and which led to the 01 car and our championship run there.
Interestingly, the same sentiment was echoed by the previous owner of my Cup car. When I purchased the car, it came with some documentation, and one of the items was a PCA logbook. I knew immediately that I wanted to track down the first name in it. Thankfully, he's been more than willing to wander down memory lane with me. Lynn Wilson actually bought and imported one of the first 996 GT3 Cup cars to the US in the late 90s. He raced it a bit in World Challenge, but decided to sell it and go all in on a GT3R with fellow racer Adam Merzon.
That car, when we got that, it was like undrivable. I was faster in a Cup car than I was in the GT3R because the thing required so much development to get it to work right. The geometry was all weird. People referred to it as a bucking bronco. It was a really hard car to drive fast. But these Cup cars, these 2000 Cup cars, even with minimal to no downforce in the back, were really, really easy to drive fast.
After an abundance of hair pulling with the GT3R, they decided to sell the car and go back to racing a Cup car. This Cup car.
Congratulations on getting it. It's sort of a perfect car to get price-wise if you want to have something that's relatively modern, but not stupid expensive when stuff fails and breaks and all that. And it was a really, really fun car to drive.
It was a blast to hear about the history of the car, and probably even more fun to hear Lynn's racing story. A gift to Skip Barber's racing school set him on a path to pursue his passion. He still does a lot of sim racing to this day, and he's damn fast in the digital realm too. At that point in the conversation, though, I still wasn't sure where I would go with the car. Old photos were limited, and I couldn't make out much from the old race footage either. But then, right as we were about to hang up...
Nick, I just found it.
Awesome.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna text it to you right now while we're on the phone.
Okay.
It was a photo he had printed of the car running at Daytona in 2002.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, it's got all the proper decals on the side of the car. It says Merzon and Wilson on the back window, which you really can't make out, but those are our names. Just the two of us. Yeah, number 84.
That was it. The moment I knew what the car needed to go back to. Of course, I had no idea how I'd get there, but I knew I just had to take it one step at a time.
I think it's cool what you're doing, Nick, and it's nice that you own the car now, and it does have a nice little piece of history to it with, drivers who have, done big stuff, and Merzon was...
So, I guess it's time to get to work on the car. And I'm confident the next episode won't be 10 months in the making. Fairly confident.